Hello, everyone. I am Corey Andrew Powell, and I am thrilled today to be joined by Malcolm Wood. Malcolm is a multifaceted individual. He's an adventurer, a global entrepreneur, a mentor, a brand ambassador, and so much more. His extensive career spans 2 decades and includes the founding of several businesses, including the acclaimed Maximal Concepts and its flagship restaurant, Mott 32. Malcolm is a passionate advocate as well for sustainability, and he's garnered numerous awards, including his role as a UN Mountains Heroes Ambassador. Malcolm, welcome to Motivational Mondays.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be on the show.
Thank you, sir. Great to have you as well. And are you in Dubai right now, or where are you exactly?
No, I actually live in France. So I've got a house in front of Mont Blanc, which is my favorite mountain in the world.
Oh, wow. That sounds really nice. Gorgeous. I've only been to France once, but I did manage to get to Saint-Malo and Saint-Michel. I left Paris and kind of got out in the country. So it's definitely a beautiful, beautiful place. I asked if you were in Dubai, of course, because Mott 32, I believe that's like the flagship restaurant, and that is in Dubai.
Yeah, so we're in 10 locations around the world. Next location is going to be Toronto. We opened up at the beginning of the year in Dubai on the top of the address. So it's one of the highest Chinese restaurants in the world.
Yeah. My friends who live in Dubai, they were all like, are you going to talk to that guy? Like that guy who did that? Like, do you know how that hotel is amazing? And there's only 5 stars normally, but it's a 7-star. So apparently it's a big deal. So I'm a rock star today because I'm interviewing you with my friends who live in Dubai. But your career, though, you've had a really diverse and successful career as an entrepreneur and advocate for sustainability. So I would love to know, like, what was a pivotal moment for you where you made that part of your mission, despite all your other kind of entrepreneur things? You thought, you know what, saving the planet is also a priority.
It's an interesting period of time, yeah, because we're getting a lot of information about how impactful the way we're living and how that is affecting our environment. And with that information, you can't ignore it. You can't say, okay, well, you've just told me I've done something bad, and I'm not going to change the way I'm doing something. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's kind of been like that for the last 10 years, and I think if you care about your environment, if you're passionate about nature, and you run a business in this age, it's very, very difficult to ignore the fact that you just have this bad feeling inside of you that, God, I know I'm doing something wrong. And I've just been told there's a way to do it differently. Like, so you can react to it. And I think we need to. And then the flip side of that is to try to be proactive about changing your business, the way that you do things personally, the way that you eat food, the way that you travel. It's all there, and it's all available for us to access. So I think it's, we're in that time now.
Yeah. And for you, it just was a social consciousness. Like once you became aware of it, you're like, I can be a part of the solution, basically.
The actual pivotal moment was when a good friend of mine, Craig Leeson, asked me to get involved in a plastic ocean. Mm-hmm. The kind of the day job, I call it, that I do is being a restaurateur as well as an entrepreneur. But a large part of my business has been centered around hospitality. I always say, like, these things are all interconnected. Like, I've always had a love for the environment. I've always been out in nature. I've always been climbing and skiing and flying and all of these things. And if you've got an appreciation for nature, you want to take care of it. Yeah. And then, out of a love for that came a love of food and produce and farming and, where things were coming from and how they were being produced and looking after them. So when Craig came to me, I think it was 2017, with an opportunity to help him produce and get the film Plastic Ocean over the line, I got involved in that film, and we were really lucky. We became the most awarded environmental documentary of that year because it was the first time a film had documented that microplastics was coming into the food chain, coming into human health, and becoming an epidemic around the world. And we looked at that and we sat back and we're like, oh crap, like we're doing a lot of this damage in our business, and we have the ability to change it. And so we were based in Asia. We were the first restaurant group to eliminate single-use plastics in the front of house. We changed the way that we were doing business, the way that we were receiving packages in we call it the back house. It's in the kitchen side of the business. The way that customers were coming into the restaurant, we were trying to educate them about this problem right at the beginning of this awareness that plastic was destroying the environment, but not only that, it was getting into our food chain and affecting our health. So that was kind of it. And then from then, we kind of did more films and did more around environmental sort of awareness stuff, and it's one thing led to another, basically.
Yeah, and also the last glacier, which we'll talk about in a few. But I want to just dissect quickly what you said. The plastics were getting, or they are getting into the food chain. So just to really break that down in layman's terms, you mean the food that we're eating, a lot of the byproducts of this plastics, these plastics that are I guess discarded, are finding their way back into the actual food we're consuming. Is that what you're referring to?
No,
or
100%. So if you cut open the stomach of seabirds or large fish or whales or dolphin, they're full of plastic. Those microplastics, so those are large pieces of plastics, but the plastics break down in the ocean. They turn into microplastics. They're consumed by fish, plankton, the whole entire food chain. The microplastics get into the bodies of those animals, and as they go up the food chain, they concentrate. And by the time we ingest them, we're ingesting microplastics. So if you test a large part of the human population that are eating seafood, you'll find microplastics in our bodies as well.
Okay, that's not terrifying at all. Wow. And so, of course, obviously that has big health implications for all of us. Yeah, that is pretty terrifying stuff. And so I think the biggest issue we're having, though, unfortunately now, I'm not sure about in parts of the world where you visit or where you live in Europe, of course, but here in America, there's a big problem with people who are sort of like on the denial side of these things that are occurring, whether it be climate change or, oh, the ocean's fine, the planet's been around for 1 billion years, it's going to work out fine. So I wonder do you have that sort of opposition you're up against in your work, where you have to sort of like really pound the pavement, telling people, no, this is really a thing. This is not something we're making up. And you have people who are saying, it's fine, go on with your life and be happy.
Yeah, look, with plastic ocean, it's fact. You go to any beach around the world, it's inundated with pollution and waste, and you can see microplastics on every beach. You pick up the sand, you scoop it with your hand, you look through it. It's not grains of sand anymore. It's grains of sand mixed in with plastic. That's getting into our food chain. I don't let my kids eat shellfish. There's certain, if we eat fish, we limit the amount of fish we eat and where it's from, and we try to eat freshwater fish so that it's not coming from the ocean and it's farmed ethically, et cetera, et cetera. So there's certain rules that you can do to make the situation better. When it comes to sort of pretending that things aren't going wrong, it tends to be around climate change and the impact on the environment, sort of on a global scale. And that was really the premise for doing The Last Glaciers. We wanted to, this was like 6 years ago, and the statistic was over 50% of Americans did not believe in climate change or thought it was a hoax. And that's only 6 years ago. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I sat back down with Craig. We just finished the plastic ocean, and we're thinking, what's like the biggest topic that we can challenge now? Then it was climate change. And we discussed the fact that there was a large percentage of the population that didn't believe it. So we decided that we're going to pick a topic that you just cannot argue. Like, we want to do it like we did with a plastic ocean. We're going to pick a scientific fact that just proves to everyone unanimously that this problem exists, and it exists around the world. And we're like, how can we explain this to a kid, to get a kid to believe this? And it's like, well, melting ice everywhere. And so we're like, well, glaciers are everywhere. They're melting everywhere. So let's go around the world. Let's film these things, and let's show that the temperature of the Earth is getting more extreme and hotter on these mountain ranges. And during that film, we found out the significance of glaciers. Glaciers lock up reservoirs of water for over a third of the world's population. So if you lose the glaciers, a third of the world's population will be without fresh water, which is their life source. And those people will have to migrate to another place that has a water source, and that will cause a huge disruption. And these things are happening within the next 20 to 30 to 40 years within our lifetime. And so we're going to see a mass migration because of the loss of glaciers. It's one of the most significant impacts of climate change, and nobody knows about it. You speak to 9 out of 10 people, they just think, oh, these it doesn't matter if the glaciers go, it's just some sort of thing, and the mountain's going to look different. Well, no, right. Everything downstream from that mountain is going to dry up and go into drought, and then those people will not be able to exist there. And it's a huge problem.
Yeah, I think it's definitely still, unfortunately, it's a fact. Like you said, some people think it's sort of exterior and it's just visual, not an actual thing that will impact lives. And you still have people who are going to always deny science, even if you probably show them exactly what's happening. So it's not to make a pun. It's an uphill battle, though, unfortunately. But I definitely appreciate the efforts, because I don't think when you're removed from a situation, it's top of mind, as most of us don't live near glaciers. We're not even thinking about them. So the idea to bring those to people, where they live and maybe understand it better, is hopefully a step in the right direction. Now, you're an ambassador for the UN, as well as I mentioned, the Mountain Heroes team. What exactly is that? And what is your roles or missions as part of that team?
Typically, they choose athletes that have done a bunch of work around, climate change, or promoting awareness on waste management, etc. So people that are kind of in the sporting world. And one of my hats that I wear is I'm an advocate of air sports, speed flying, paragliding. I own a paragliding company where we produce some of the best sort of speed wings for flying very fast down mountains. And I've always been passionate about that. And we used that concept in the last glaciers to kind of engage the kids in adventure. So all of these mountains we went to, we decided not to use helicopters. We decided to use paragliders and speed wings and fly over them with like the director strapped in front of me with a camera pointing down at the glacier.
Wow.
So for the work in the last glaciers, the United Nations kind of recognized the work I was doing. And because there was this element of extreme sports tied in there, I joined that team. So there's some other prominent athletes in there, but I'm kind of like the little special one that's not really a professional athlete, right. Is engaged in the sport in a big way.
That's amazing. And of course, I mean, you might be the only one who's like jumping out of planes and stuff. You have your own skill set that probably definitely makes you stand out in that arena. I think it's pretty amazing too, because it's showing that people can also sort of like just use their attributes to make a difference in certain capacities. So it's really cool that you're recognized in that way. And I know you had this other project, I believe I was reading, called the Meru Project. Meru, yeah. Meru. And what's that project about?
So the Meru Projects is a foundation that we set up a couple of years ago, just kind of in COVID, to try to help some communities where we can just give back in some of the remote places that we visited, and kind of try to provide them with solutions that can help them live more sustainably. So like, a small mountain village in Nepal that has a power shortage and a power problem, is off grid. Yeah. So providing them with a solution through solar panels and batteries and things like that. So looking at setting up projects like that around kind of the poorer regions in the world. Yeah. Trying to raise money and look at kind of tech-driven solutions.
So Malcolm, given your experience as a global entrepreneur, of course, so what advice would you offer to aspiring entrepreneurs who are looking to make an impact, right? Not just in their own personal lives, but somehow maybe aligning their industry or their business with that particular interest?
It's an interesting question, because if you try to push some of your ideas onto your audience before you're successful, you potentially may lose them. I mean, we talk about this disparity in people's views on whether or not it's an important topic to talk about, being sustainable or being environmental. It's kind of a chicken and egg. I always say that once I got to a place where I had a platform to be able to change people's minds, um, I now have influence over them. Yeah, so they come into my restaurants. I can show them that, look, there's a plant-based alternative that you could be eating. Not everyone's going to choose that. But if I opened up with a plant-based menu, I'm not sure I would have got the audience at the first place. Mm-hmm. That's one of the big things I'm always kind of discussing, is whether or not you how to be influential in your ideas, and how to convince people that this is the right way to do things, because you can convince people by force. Or you can convince people by influence, or by example. And there's certain situations where one way is right and the other way is not. In terms of kind of just setting up businesses that are more environmentally focused, I mean, there's so many tools out there, so many solutions, and I think it's a really exciting time to be alive, because we have the ability to do things differently, and you have an audience today that will buy into those ideas, buy into those products, even at a higher price. And that's because of all the awareness that has been made available over the last 5, 6, 8 years. With education comes motivation to make change. And you can see that globally. We have businesses all around the world. We have businesses in locations in Asia where they don't have access to the same information that we do in the West. And I always say it's not because they don't care that they're not buying into it. They've just been taught in their culture that eating meat is a sign of wealth and success. And so when we go out to dinner at a restaurant, we want to get the big pile of meat and the big fish and all of these things and show off. They just haven't had the access to watching these videos and information that we need to reduce the amount of meat consumption, and we have to lower greenhouse gases, et cetera, et cetera. So you've got to make sure that you're pitching the right business to the right audience to be successful.
Yeah. And I really love the point you made about the message is what's most important, of how you're delivering that message to people, because you can isolate. And of course, as I mentioned, in such a divisive climate right now over every issue. I mean, I can go on any social media platform and someone's either fighting over Taylor Swift and Beyonce, or veganism versus not eating meat. And there's just a lot of vitriol and anger. And I'm like, maybe if you explain to me why you think this way versus telling me I should think that way too, it's a very different outcome in many cases. So now I love that you stressed that point. And I have to also ask you, as we come to the end of our conversation here, you mentioned, of course, and I mentioned in the intro, you do a lot of stuff. You're an adventurer, mentor, entrepreneur. I mean, all the adventurous sports, everything. And then you manage all these businesses and you do all the stuff. So I'm just curious, for our audience who's, college age, looking to get out in the world and start doing things, how do you balance all those things? I mean, how do you, are there any strategies or habits that you have to help you manage having such an active life professionally and personally, and stay energetic, I guess, to accomplish all of the things you're trying to do?
There's a few things here. One is, I think the most important thing is that you got to look after yourself. If you're in the right mindset, if you're sleeping well, if you're nourished well, you're exercising well, you'll have the energy to do things. The second thing is organization. It's 80% planning, 20% execution. Building a company is not about driving everyone around you. It's about building people. You're not building a company. You're building a team around you, and the team is the most important thing. So the first thing we teach in all of our restaurants, all of our businesses, is the customer is not the most important person. You, the team, is the most important person. And if you have a good team, you can accomplish anything.
Thank you so much for all you do as a fellow human. I will say thank you for the work you do on behalf of saving this home of ours that we all share. So Malcolm Wood, individual, showing that individuals can make a difference in whatever realm they can. We appreciate you being here today, and keep up the great work. Malcolm Wood, thanks for being here on Motivational Mondays.
Thanks for having me.